Good morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other in our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I'm so glad that you have joined us this week for one of my favorite services of the year, Flower Communion. Flower Communion is a uniquely Unitarian Universalist ritual, and we'll be talking a little bit about the history of that ritual today, as well as why appreciating beauty is a spiritual practice. And now, as I light our chalice here in the meeting house, I invite you to light a candle wherever you are. In this way, we can feel together even while we are apart.
Summer warmth. We stand at the edge of summer. The sun has at last warmed us enough that we begin to trust in its presence. The last burst of spring blossoms, lavender and white and deep pink, banks of rhododendron, are giving way to summer peonies and roses. O source of the turning seasons, of earth, of life, of promise, gradually becoming fulfillment. May your people find a lightening of burdens with the brightening of the sky.
The Word by Tony Hoagland. Down near the bottom of the crossed-out list of things you have to do today, between green thread and broccoli, you find that you have penciled sunlight. Resting on the page, the word is beautiful. It touches you as if you had a friend and sunlight were a present he had sent from someplace distant, as this morning, to cheer you up and to remind you that among your duties, pleasure is the thing that also needs accomplishing. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love, and love is no less practical than a coffee grinder or a safe spare tire? Tomorrow, you may be utterly without a clue, but today you get a telegram from the heart in exile, proclaiming that the kingdom still exists, the king and queen alive, still speaking to their children, to anyone among them who can find the time to sit out in the sun and to listen.
Nearly 100 years ago, the Unitarian minister Norbert Chopek offered his Czechoslovakian congregation a ritual to respond to their questions about how to be a community that welcomed rather than suppressed diversity. Czechoslovakia was a country formed in the aftermath of war, struggling just 5 years after the end of that war with questions of belonging and identity, trust and anxiety. Chopek's ritual took the traditional bread and wine communion that his community was too heretical for and too resistant to these usual symbols and played with this ritual. He turned instead to the beauty of nature all around them and invited each of his congregants to find a flower and bring it to the church one Sunday. That each person would find the flower that was beautiful to them was a symbol of their affirmation that each of us has a piece of the truth, our unique sense of what beauty means. On their way into the church, his congregation was in turn invited, each of them, to place that flower in a vase, which symbolized their free choice to enter into community alongside all the other people that saw beauty in their own way, symbolized by their flowers placed there as well. A free church where people freely choose to walk together across their differences. Once everyone had gathered, they'd bring the vase forward. Then the minister, Chopek, he would bless it. And then he'd invite everyone to choose a flower to take home with them, but just not the one that they came with. Again, this free choice affirmed each person's choice to be blessed by another and to receive with an open heart their different understandings of beauty and to feel connected rather than divided by this difference. In this moment where so many forces seek to divide people, to play on our fears of differences and our anxieties of the other, here we remember that we freely choose to walk together and to be blessed by the differences between us and to see these differences as beauty.
Naturalist John Muir once wrote, "Everybody needs beauty as well as bread. Places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul." This week we took time out of our busy schedules to come together to create a communal bouquet as part of our flower communion. It was amazing. As each person added their flower, the bouquet grew and grew, becoming more and more colorful, more and more beautiful. My favorites were the peonies. Gorgeous, flouncy clouds of white with subtle pink surprising streaks. They smell incredible. I wish you could smell this. I just keep sticking my nose into them to drink in their scent. It reminds me of Ross Gay's meditation on lilies in his Book of Delights. The whole meditation is one long extended sentence. "A lily," he said, "was the first flower I planted in my garden, and I pray to it daily in the 4 to 6 weeks that it offers up its pinkish speckling by getting on my knees and pushing my face in, which, yes, is also a kind of kissing, as I tend to pucker my lips and close my eyes. And if you get close enough, you'd probably hear some minute slurping between us. And for some reason, I wish to deploy the verb drowning, which, in addition to being cliche, implies a particular kind of death. And I will follow the current of that verb to suggest that the flower kissing, the moving so close to another living and breathing thing's breath, which in this case is the lily that I planted 6 years ago, will in fact kill you with delight, will annihilate you with delight, will end the life you had previously led before kneeling here and breathing the breathing thing's breath, and the lily will resurrect you, and your lips and nose will be lit with gold dust, your face and fingers smelling faintly all day of where they've been. Amen. During my time off, I read Anne Lamott's new book, Dusk, Night, Dawn. A lot of it is about how she is settling into her new marriage to a man named Neil. Mostly, marriage is wonderful. Occasionally, it is not. Like when Neil is being a know-it-all. I hate to be wrong, Anne says, and I hate that I am wrong so often in so many ways. My thinking is often defensive, judgmental, and skittish. So imagine how she felt when her newly beloved Neil corrected her one day about what kind of flowers the famed lilies of the field were in one of her most favorite anti-anxiety passages in the Bible, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount from Matthew 6. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Neil said, Jesus did not mean lilies, the kind we think of. Lilies don't grow in fields. They grow in marshes, grasslands, mountains. Most experts agree that the flowers were probably crown anemones. Anne studied him for a moment when he announced this from behind the driver's wheel as they passed a field on one side. And finally she said, "Really, Neil?" He started to elaborate in his blithely professorial way, but she cut him off and stared grimly out the car window as the passing golden, undulating, and lilyless fields went by. When she got home and looked it up, he was, of course, right. The flowers to which Jesus referred were probably crown anemones, bright, garish poppies, beautiful in a somewhat clownish way. I had always thought they were regular old lilies, Anne said, like the kind sold at Easter. The kind you see painted on mugs and pencil cases in Catholic gift shops, like the kind we grow in our garden. The lilies outside our window, Anne says, remind me of chalices, ceremonial containers that you want to hold with both your hands so that you don't spill the contents. Now, when Anne sees lilies, she has to work at putting away her annoyance at Neil and at having been wrong yet again, and focus on the beauty of them, which always gets her back to a more serene state. Nature is good at that, reminding us to put away our petty grievances, our crushing anxieties, our fixation on doing and producing and running from place to place. Nature reminds us that admiring beauty is a form of worship, an acknowledgement of the sacred in our ordinary lives. Jesus advises this: consider the lilies of the field. The world does not have to be beautiful, and yet it is. It is so beautiful. Even when things are hard, even when we are annoyed by our spouses, even when we are disappointed by our friends, even when we are struggling with illness, with debt, with parenting, with taking care of our aging parents, with all that life is challenging us with, the world is still so incredibly beautiful. Lynn Unger writes, "Consider the lilies of the field, the blue banks of camas opening into acres of sky along the road. Would the longing to lie down and be washed by that beauty abate if you knew their usefulness? How the natives ground their bulbs for flour, how the settlers' hogs uprooted them, grunting in gleeful oblivion as the flowers fell? And you, what of your rushed and useful life? Imagine setting it all down, papers, plans, appointments, everything, leaving only a note. Gone to the fields to be lovely. Be back when I'm through with blooming." Even now, unneeded and uneaten, the cama lilies gaze out above the grass from their tender blue eyes. Even in sleep, your life will shine. Make no mistake, of course your work will always matter. Yet Solomon, in all his glory, was not arrayed like one of these. Gone to the fields to be lovely. I cannot think of a better way to pray than that.